successor will not be chosen by Beijing. He said that the process will be carried out exclusively by the Gaden Phodrang Trust, which has been established to oversee his spiritual legacy. And this statement reaffirms that no external authority, including any government, has the right to interfere in this sacred matter. China had sharply opposed this position, insisting that the next Dalai Lama must be chosen according to its own Tibet Rulebook, which requires the reincarnation to be selected by drawing of lots from a golden urn and approved by the Chinese central government. Then, in a significant development yesterday that irked the Chinese, Union Minister Kiren Rijiju publicly backed Dalai Lama's right to choose his own successor, stating that no one has the right to interfere or decide who the successor of His Holiness the Dalai Lama will be. The minister again today emphasized that the followers worldwide expect the successor to be chosen by the Dalai Lama himself. China responded with a strong retort, urging India to recognize the Dalai Lama as an anti-China separatist and to be cautious in its own words and actions, warning against meddling in China's internal matters. Now, this led to the Ministry of External Affairs issuing a statement that said, Government of India does not take any position or speak on matters concerning beliefs and practices of faith and religion. Government has upheld freedom of religion for all in India and will continue to do so.
That's for the Chinese government to decide whether a government that does not believe in any religion wants to interfere in the religious freedom of the Tibetan people. Not just occupy our country, but also force a lot of things on us, including religious freedom, to choose our own spiritual leader. So that is very unfortunate. And Chinese government always keeps saying something. What you're saying is they're saying that we broke from tradition. What tradition is the Chinese government talking about? The golden urn? This was introduced only in 1793, late 18th century. There have been 8 Dalai Lamas before that. Are those Dalai Lamas not Dalai Lamas because there was no golden urn? And the golden urn was hardly used in the 9th and the 11th Dalai Lama. Even those cases was done much after the candidate was already selected through traditional means.
हमको confusion में रहने का जरूरत नहीं है. दलाई लामा जी पूरे विश्व में जितने बौद्ध धर्म मानने वाले लोग हैं और जो परम पावन दलाई लामा जी को जो मानते हैं, वो सबका इच्छा है कि दलाई लामा जी अपना तय करेंगे. ये तो भारत सरकार का या मुझे अलग से कुछ कहने का आवश्यकता नहीं है. अगले दलाई लामा कौन हो वो तो दलाई लामा जी और मुझे चाइना का स्टेटमेंट पे मुझे कोई रिएक्शन करना नहीं है. मैं एक अनुयायी का तरफ से बोल रहा हूं. मैं एक डिवोटी हूं, परम पावन दलाई लामा जी को मानता हूं. मैं इस नाते कहता हूं कि पूरे दुनिया में परम पावन दलाई लामा जी को जो मानते हैं वो उनका इच्छा है कि दलाई लामा जी खुद तय करेंगे. ये अनुयायी का इच्छा है. मैं भारत सरकार का बिहाफ से या चाइनीज गवर्नमेंट का स्टेटमेंट को मैं कुछ उस पे नहीं कह रहा हूं. मैं किसी का बिहाफ से नहीं कह रहा हूं.
关于你的第二个问题，我想我们希望印方充分认识到摄藏问题的高度敏感性，认清14世达赖的反华分裂本质，恪守在摄藏问题上的承诺，谨言慎行，停止利用摄藏问题干涉中国内政，避免影响中印关系的改善和发展。
So why does China care? Because Dalai Lama isn't just a monk. He's a symbol of Tibetan identity, a challenge to Chinese rule and a global voice for autonomy and peace. Controlling his successor gives China legitimacy in Tibet, leverage in global diplomacy, and a chance to weaken the Tibetan independence movement. A battle for spiritual succession is fast turning into a test of political sovereignty, where one man's reincarnation may end up redrawing lines of power. That brings us to the question for today. Can Dalai Lama's succession process succeed without China's blessing? And why is China wary about any Indian influence in the succession process? And to discuss this further, I'm joined by an esteemed panel of guests this evening. I'm joined by Laghyari Namgyal Dolkar, who is a Tibetan Member of Parliament. I'm also joined by Ambassador Veena Sikri, a former Indian diplomat, and Dr. Tilak Jha, who is a China expert and an associate professor at the Bennett University. Thank you so much for taking your time and joining us over here. I'll first go across to you, Ms. Dolkar. How do you look at the statement that has been made by China, where they are trying to assert their right in deciding Dalai Lama's successor? What is the first sentiment that comes to you, Ms. Dolkar? Well, we'll try and reconnect with Mr. Dolkar, but I was asking that question, that what is the primary sentiment that lies with the Tibetan Buddhists at this point in time, where they are looking at how the succession plans of Dalai Lama is being frowned upon and criticized by the Chinese government? I'll come across to you, Ms. Veena Sikri. Now, why India is at this very, very sensitive juncture? They are trying to re-establish and mend ties with China. We did see how Ajit Doval was in China, and now, of course, the Foreign Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar is also headed there. At this juncture, when India is faced with challenges pertaining to China and Pakistan, when the succession plan of Dalai Lama comes into play, how is it going to impact India's relationship with China? Ms. Sikri.
I think, first and foremost, I must draw your attention to the statement by the Ministry of External Affairs. They made it very clear that there is freedom of religion for all in India. And the government of India makes no statement on any issue concerning faith and religion. So this is very clear that the government of India has nothing to do with what the Dalai Lama has said about his own method of reincarnation, what he has prescribed for the Tibetan Buddhists, and what he has said will happen in the next, whenever he passes on. So I think that we have to draw complete distinction between two things. All the time, all the decades that Honorable Dalai Lama has been in India, India has always given him complete religious and spiritual freedom, and of course has been very careful that there should be no political aspect to it. The Dalai Lama himself has given up all temporal power. He has no temporal position at all. There is a separate Tibetan government in exile, and ahead of the Tibetan government in exile, the Sechong, we just heard him speak. It's only on the religious aspects that the Dalai Lama has kept his leadership of the Tibetan Buddhists. So if we look at it in this sense, the government of India has nothing at all to do with what the Dalai Lama has said. It's his own decision based on his own inner concentrations, on his own consultation. He said when he made the statement a few days ago that he has received views, detailed views from Buddhists all over the world, including from within mainland China, and of course from other countries of Asia, even as far away as Russia, and of course all over, and even from the Tibetan government in exile. And all of them have given them his very, very carefully considered views, on the basis of which he has made the decision, saying that there will be a reincarnation, and the reincarnation will be born in a free country, and that the Chinese government has nothing to do with the reincarnation and the appointment of the next Dalai Lama. So I think that this is something that is entirely a religious matter. It's a matter of spiritual faith, and the government of India has nothing to do with it. It's something the Dalai Lama has decided, and it should be allowed to go ahead as such.
Absolutely. Ms. Dolkar is back with us. Ms. Dolkar, Ms. Veena Sikri was elucidating on the fact that India hasn't taken position on this entire matter, saying that everybody has a right to practice their religion and India will not meddle in that space. But when it comes to the Tibetan Buddhists, what is the first sentiment that you are going through when you hear of China trying to appropriate the succession plan, saying that it needs a sanction from the Chinese government?
Well, Samya, this really constitutes the blatant infringement of the freedom of religion of the Tibetans. We're looking into how so far it has been constituted within the occupied Tibet. Now we're looking at Chinese Communist Party openly declaring that their control over the freedom of religion of Tibetan is going beyond that. And literally, if you look into it, we're talking about their control of His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama currently residing in the territory of the Union of India. Chinese Communist Party to make such a statement, it does not surprise me. We were expecting that sort of statement from them, especially after His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, through his reaffirmation yesterday, clarified that no one, especially Chinese government, has no say in the succession of His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. So that would have been quite a kick for them that they were not expecting this soon. But Chinese government and its mouthpiece, they have been reiterating this statement for a long time, and it's not just limited to the statement made yesterday by the ministry, the foreign ministry residing in China. We're looking at the Chinese ambassador of India, living in India, making such a statement. So all we know is they must understand that this is a religious affair, something that is so sacred, something that is so personal to the Tibetan Buddhist community residing around the world, the Buddhist community within the Himalayan region and around the world, who will accept nobody but the reincarnation that His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama himself addresses and announces when the time comes. But while we are addressing on the reincarnation of His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama, let us be very clear, especially the Chinese government, that His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama is in the best of his physical strength at the moment, especially his determination that he will, for many years, continue the amazing work that he's been doing so far. He's determined, especially that now the Tibetan community, we are determined to be able to celebrate his 100th birthday in a free Tibet. This is how we see it, and this is the resilience of the Tibetan freedom movement, and I'm sure that Tibetans inside Tibet will be sending out a similar message towards Chinese government. So whatever they say, it holds no weightage. We must know that this is a spiritual matter that has been practiced by the Tibetans for over centuries, and this is something that Chinese government can have no say whatsoever. They have done that in the past. They have recognized their own puppets in the name of religious reincarnation, but they have received no support, leave aside reverence of the Tibetan community or the Buddhist community around the world. Even if in the future they decide that they want to recognize through whatever form or manner their own Dalai Lama in future, that individual will receive no respect, no reverence from anyone. So it shall be entirely the sole authority of His Holiness the Dalai Lama himself, who will choose the future 15th Dalai Lama in the old religious festivity that we have had in the past, and it shall be something that will be carried on by his office, Gaden Phodrang.
Absolutely, Ms. Dolkar. An emotional space right now that several Tibetan Buddhists find themselves at right now. And Dr. Jha, you know, this is a personal issue, is what Ms. Dolkar was trying to say, that when it comes to religion and faith, it should not be seen from a political prism. And perhaps that is the prism, that the rubric at which the China is looking at towards this entire matter is coming from a political space, not trying to factor in the kind of emotion of several Buddhists world over. And this is exactly what even Kiren Rijiju, the Union Minister, had said, that he is a practicing Buddhist, and when he is making a statement, it comes from a place of faith.
Well, actually, the China is not even looking it from a political point of view. If you go into the nature of Chinese Communist Party, the lack of understanding of politics is just beyond imagination. I mean, if you just see, for that matter, that 1.4 billion country to win faith of a minority community, which is less than 5 million people, what does it say about it? I mean, Communist Party has been trying to eliminate Tibetan religious beliefs by rather forcefully sort of deploying communist philosophical worldview, which doesn't go beyond politics and economy. They do deploy it with a sprinkling of Sinicization, as they call it, trying to add some Chinese characteristics to it. But they keep misunderstanding its philosophical dimension. And I think the worst thing that has happened in the so-called modern China is that they have developed a very, very inflexible inclination to see everything from a security, political, or economic view. This securitization, politicization, and rather financialization, or you may use another word, commercialization of the Chinese party state worldview has made them rather view the Tibetan religious beliefs from a very deliberate and very, very unnatural position. This is fundamentally not even Oriental, I would say, not even Chinese in the fundamental sense of the term. It is very much rooted in a political economy framework which has its roots in communism primarily, and what we may call Western to a great extent. So I would say, and I think they have what they have tried is that they have countered every alternative view. They have censored it. They have eliminated it. They have tried to sort of uproot it entirely. So I think it is to see politics in it is to demean politics. Politics is the art of understanding. Politics is the art of balance. It's the art of compromise. What kind of politics would that be, which has not been able to even sinicize the Chinese majority Han population in 75 years? I mean, if you talk to Chinese people, if you just remove censorship for a few, I think there have been some instances. I think post Tiananmen Square incident, a bit of opening during the Mao era as well, when this 100 Flowers movement happened, a bit of opening, and people started criticizing Chinese Communist Party like anything. So I mean, they have not been able to understand the Chinese society very well either. I think this is in contradiction with that fundamental thing. I expect them to sort of understand Tibetan religious view is a misplaced notion. And I think they're talking about a 6th century old institution, tradition which is basically in the late 18th century, 1793, this golden urn tradition. And this is a 6th century old tradition. Dalai Lamas have been around for even before that. There were at least 8 Dalai Lamas before 1793, as far as I know. So I think we need to see this in that perspective.
Now, we have to see it in that perspective. Perhaps it's a power struggle that the China is looking at right now. They are trying to get a foothold through this entire process if they manage to appropriate it. But Ms. Sikri, you know, knowing China, if they really want this to be a process that is devoid of any issues, then they should allow a succession plan that the Dalai Lama deems fit. But if China is given an opportunity to decide upon it, do you think they are going to select anybody who is outside of China? They will always only push for their nominee. And what happens in a situation where the Gaden Phodrang Trust and China ends up selecting separate such successors? Then who eventually is going to be the Dalai Lama's successor?
Well, you know, I think as the Honorable Dalai Lama himself said, he has said that he will live till the age of 110. So that's, you know, at least 20 years down the road from now. We wish him a very long and healthy and happy life. So I think that this question is very far in the future on what will happen if there are 2 Dalai Lamas. But we have seen that the Chinese government, in their very short-sighted and limited view of things, has done this. With the Panchen Lama, they have done that. You know, that the originally appointed Panchen Lama is nowhere to be seen, and somebody appointed by the Chinese government, you know, comes out and makes statements every now and then. So, but this is, I think, a way in which they have politicized the issue, and they have created more opposition among the faithful believers of the Buddhist faith and the faithful followers of the Dalai Lama and the faithful followers of Tibetan Buddhism. So I think that this is a problem, that this politicization has had a negative impact on the support of the people of Tibet for the Chinese Communist Party, as was just stated by our eminent co-panelists. So I think this is a point that the Chinese government will certainly be looking into. But right now, we have to just see that what statement that the Dalai Lama has made is entirely to do with the Tibetan Buddhism, and he is free to practice his religion. So we as the government has made a very definite statement. They're going to keep quiet. They're not going to say anything at all. And I think this situation will go on and develop as it will in the future. The Chinese government
But Ms. Sikri, my simple question is that can there be a successor to the Dalai Lama without China's approval?
No, it is very clear, as stated by the Dalai Lama, that the trust that he has created, the Gaden Phodrang Trust, that is the final authority to decide on the next Dalai Lama based on the various traditional indications, whatever is specified in the Tibetan Buddhist faith. So I think that this is what he has said. But the point is that if the Chinese government tries to create two Dalai Lamas, as you've said, that one will be appointed by this trust and they will try and appoint a second one from within, that would really have no basis, because as the Dalai Lama himself said, all the followers of Tibetan Buddhism from within mainland China have also been writing to him and have also conveyed to him their views. So the belief and the support is entirely for the Dalai Lama in what he has said. So what the Chinese government will do, I cannot predict, but if they are trying to politicize the issue, it may reduce further the support for them, because the overwhelming feeling as conveyed by the Dalai Lama in his statement a few days ago was that he has received inputs from all over, from follow the Tibetan Buddhism all over the world, including mainland China, and they support what he's saying, because he's based his statement on what feedback he has got. So I think this is what we should live with right now, and this is how the situation should be allowed to stay calm, because as I've said, there's at least 2 decades ahead. So till then, the situation will remain as it is. Politicizing it is not in anyone's interest. It will only weaken support for any institution or government that tries to take away from what the Dalai Lama has said about the succession in the Tibetan Buddhism and the selection of the 15th Dalai Lama.
But China may not leave this opportunity uncontested. We have to wait and see how China is going to eventually respond. But Ms. Dolkar, how do you look at the ongoing standoff between China and Tibet that is going on the succession plan? And what do you feel that how can it possibly impact the future of Tibet? Do you think that the tension can get exaggerated, exacerbated when it comes to between China and Tibet vis-a-vis the succession of the Dalai Lama?
Well, honestly speaking, I don't see a standoff here. We're talking about the legitimacy of the Dalai Lama's institution, and the Chinese government today is the PRC, the People's Republic of China, formed in 1949. And we're talking about the Dalai Lama's institution that began many, many centuries back. And the legitimacy the manipulated legitimacy based on the manipulation in terms of the history and spiritual aspect that China is carrying on is by bringing in the Qing Manchu emperor. So it does not make any sense to me in terms of when we follow back to history that China would even consider that the imperial Manchu who colonized China and even Tibet at that time, and they would consider that the decision that was taken by the Qing emperor at that time is something that they have legitimacy over. On top of that, what is very important is to understand that the whole golden urn system is something that the Tibetan communities since centuries have not found any spiritual sanctity, hence was not implemented in the past. Except for the 11th Dalai Lama, no Dalai Lamas have ever implemented that. That's the first thing. So in terms of history, there's no standoff at all. So if we are talking about today, we must understand that it's the Dalai Lama himself taking a decision for his own future. When we are talking, it's the most common sense that I, as an individual, have the authority to decide about myself. We're talking about this Chinese government, an atheist government who does not believe in the concept of rebirth, leave aside the concept of reincarnation, even deems any sort of claim over the reincarnation of the Dalai Lama. And about the future, what is very important to understand is, as I mentioned earlier, it's a spiritual aspect. So whoever has the spiritual authority, which is entirely the authority that His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama has, will have the easy win when it comes to this, this situation. So all I say is there is no competition here. There is no standoff here. Chinese government, I feel, is trying to bring in the attention, the political aspect of the whole situation towards something else. How I see it is Chinese government must prepare themselves. As I mentioned several times in the past, is that as His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama ages, the time is ticking for a Chinese government. I'm saying so because when it comes to the China, like Tibet-China conflict, as the Tibet issue that we often call, China has been, giving excuses that there is no Tibet issue. They've been saying it's just Dalai Lama issue, as if they don't recognize the Tibetan government exile and the Tibet issue as a whole. So why I'm saying clock is ticking for China is the fact that His Holiness, with all his good heart, has proposed something that is beneficial to China. All I see is if they only recognize the Dalai Lama's institution, what will happen in the future when we are talking about post-14 Dalai Lama. So all I'm saying is it's important the Chinese government recognize the importance of the time that they have in their hands. So as I mentioned earlier, there's no standoff here. The ball is entirely in the court of His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama.
Absolutely, and it is the Dalai Lama who is going to decide upon their successor. But I have paucity of time. But before I wrap this conversation, Dr. Jha, you've heard what the statement was that India has issued on this entire matter. Now, while China has not been successful in managing to suppress the kind of leadership in Tibet under Dalai Lama, do you think there is a need for India to take a position on this entire matter?
I think India's official position has been fairly consistent, and I think that's a balanced position, I would say. As of now, I think we have to just wait for possibly the Chinese to do their part in terms of their egregious failure of continuing to be mismanaged Tibet affairs. So I think as of now, the wait and watch is possibly the best strategy. We have already, possibly the Indian government has already done enough in terms of the Tibetan community, which is in India, consistently supporting their sustenance. I think this is the strategy that has to be followed. In the long term, I don't see China either changing much for that matter, but I think ultimately some political or economic crisis inside the Communist Party could lead to some new changes, and I think we should wait for that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much to our esteemed panel of guests who joined me this evening to discuss this very important subject. What is going to be the implications of the Dalai Lama succession plan? Well, that we will have to wait and watch. But thank you, Ms. Dolkar, Ms. Sikri and Dr. Jha for taking your time and joining us here at Newsline.
मेरा नया कुकी होल्डर कप एक तेरे लिए मंगाऊं? नहीं। मेरा नया क्लाइमेट कंट्रोल, मेरे नए म्यूजिक गॉगल्स मंगाओ क्या? मेरा नया रेन प्रोटेक्टर।
मेरी नई गाड़ी
नाइस
कप होल्डर है, कुकी भी रख सकते हैं, क्लाइमेट कंट्रोल है, म्यूजिक भी।
सेविंग्स की विद्या तो कुछ से सीखे।
कुछ बड़ा बनाना है तो पहले बचाओ। फेडरल बैंक से रिश्ता बनाओ।
बुझने लगे किसी की उमंग को, उसको तो रंग दो, दुनिया को रंग दो। दुनिया को रंग दो।
Birla Opus Paints.
This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9, English news as it should be.
Strong message on regional security. Deputy Chief of Army Staff Lieutenant General Rahul R. Singh has highlighted the evolving threat landscape. Speaking at FICCI's New Age Military Technologies event in Delhi, Lieutenant General Rahul Singh drew attention to the changing nature of security threats. He emphasized the critical role of air defense during recent operations and also warned that even though population centers remain largely untouched this time, the next conflict might be very different in nature. He added that India must be prepared for any kind of situation. Lieutenant General Rahul R. Singh also said that India is not just dealing with one adversary while Pakistan is on the front lines, is a visible enemy. It's China that's backing them from behind and provided extensive support. He revealed that nearly 81% of Pakistan's military hardware comes from China. He also described how China uses conflicts to test its weapons like a live laboratory, and also noted Turkey's involvement in aiding Pakistan's capabilities. Further, Lieutenant General Singh also revealed that Pakistan was receiving real-time updates on Indian military movements from China and underscored the need for a more robust and modern air defense system here in India.
Leadership, the strategic messaging by leadership was unambiguous. You cross our red lines and there would be action, there would be punitive action if required. There is no scope of absorbing the pain the way we did a few years ago. So that is one important message that stands out loud and clear. Second, as far as Operation Sindoor was concerned, the planning and selection of targets was based on a lot of data that was collected, using technology and I would say human intelligence. So a total of 21 targets were actually sort of identified, out of which 9 targets